Bom dias. It's a real pleasure to be with you here today to discuss some of the experiences and challenges that editors of nursing journals have. And I wish I could do this in Portuguese, but unfortunately I can't. So I'm going to try to speak so that it's easy for translators to translate, and I look forward to the time when we can have conversations together. So I was asked to talk about experience in being an editor, some of my challenges, and some of my achievements. And so that's what I'm going to do with you. In terms of experiences, I think it's always important to know how people get to places, because otherwise, how do you plan? I always say if you don't have a map, you might be only a block away from the Eiffel Tower and never know it unless you can see what's near you on the map. So my map in terms of getting an editor was that I started out as a manuscript reviewer and reviewed for a number of different journals. And then I was really interested and let people know that I was interested who were editors, and wound up being on manuscript review panels, went to associate editors. I was an associate editor when the Journal of Nursing Scholarship was called Image. And then I was also an associate editor of Nursing Research. And that really was because I was proximally, geographically, very close to the editor. And so it was easy for her to work with us. So for whatever reasons, one gets these opportunities, letting people know, being in a good place, doing some initial work with manuscripts and with editors. I was able to see a little bit what the editor job was like, and to be an associate editor for those two journals. And so then when there was an editorship open for the Journal of Nursing Scholarship, I decided to apply and eventually was named the editor. So a little forethought into getting there. When I started as the editor of the Journal of Nursing Scholarship, there were, of course, many things I didn't know. And so one of the most difficult things, I think, is getting used to dealing with the online submission and, the online computerized systems that exist. Sometimes I think I'm so old that there must have been dinosaurs on the face of the earth when I started. But when I worked as an associate editor for Nursing Research, Florence Downs had everything in ledgers, and she hand wrote everything. Much easier to have electronic systems, and much easier for authors to be able to just upload it. But it does take a little bit of knowing how it works and when it's going to not give you the information you want and what other information you can get from it. So that was kind of the biggest, I don't want to say challenge, but the biggest new thing when I started. And then, of course, it was also the timeline, the workflow, because one of the very first things I did when I became an editor was to go to a convention that Wiley, who is my publisher, put on. And I asked somebody who was in the publishing business, how would you know I was a success? What would you be looking for that would tell you that I was a success? And she said, well, do you get out all of your issues on time and with enough articles in them? And that was a really interesting question, because sometimes you're way ahead of where you need to be, and sometimes you're way behind. And so thinking about when you really need to be paying attention and moving articles because you need to have a full issue ready is an important thing. Knowing when you don't have to be on the computer every day trying to move articles because you have a little bit of a cushion. I tried to be ahead 2 issues, but the timing of that also took me a little bit to do. So how do you help people to submit? How do you know you have enough submissions that are good submissions? Those were really important challenges. And I have found that one of the things that helps with submissions is having special issues. So I found that if there's something that's really an important topic that the editorial board thinks would be of global interest, being able to say, okay, let's see who's really an expert in that field, if they'd like to be a guest editor for us, and then asking for articles on a specific manuscripts on a specific topic really helps, because then you know you're getting more manuscripts submitted, which is great. We have 3 special issues right now, which is a little bit more than I'd really like, but it just happened that way. One is on policy lessons learned from COVID as a result of the pandemic, and those articles are due, I'd have to look on the website, but sometime in the summer, May maybe. We're hoping to publish that at the end of this year. We then have another special issue on substance use that we're hoping to publish in the beginning of the 2023 year. So those are due later on, actually in the summer. And then we have one on healthcare and gender disparities. And that one is the last one that'll be due. So the having special issues has been an answer to a challenge of timing, as has just what my workflow is around timing. But timing is always a challenge, I have to say. And different these days, I keep on talking about issues, but now that journals are mostly online, there really aren't issues in the same way that there were. So if you submit an article, and I should call it a manuscript because before it's accepted, it's a manuscript. If you submit a manuscript to the Journal of Nursing Scholarship, if we accept it, put it online immediately. So, it takes a little bit of time. I don't really mean immediately because it has to be copyrighted and you have to approve the proofs, but way before the issue comes out, it's online. And once it's online, that's the official document of record. There's nothing that can be changed for when it's in an issue. It's in an issue. That's a issue that we publicize, and all of those articles are put together. And if you're a member of Sigma Theta Tau, you get a notice that that issue is ready. But those articles have been available to you, and actually you get notices that those articles have been published online. So when it comes to time, I keep on talking about issues because we're still a little bit issue-based. I still do need to have full issues that are publishing on time, but really issues in the future will be going away because everything is online and available to people immediately. So knowing the computer systems of Manuscript Central and being able to get reports and the data I want has been something I had to learn when I first started as a new editor. The timing, how to keep things moving along, whether you were in issues when we were sending out hard copies or now that it's all online, is also something that one has to look at. And how do you really get the very best articles that are possible? So part of, I think, how you get the very best articles possible is to have the very best journal possible. And one of the things that I know people around the world care about is the impact factor. And, the impact factor, which looks at how many articles have you published within the past year and how many articles have been cited, is a very unprecise way to look at excellence. I also, aside from looking at the impact factor, look at how many articles have been downloaded, because I think that tells you more about practicing nurses. Are they downloading things, which I hope they're using then? But you can't get information about downloads publicly. You can only get it from the publisher. So I do get that information from the publisher, but that's not something that our authors know about. What they really know about is the impact factor, and they really care about the impact factor. So one of the things that when we were setting out and looking at our goals, one of the things that we had to care about was we wanted to publish articles that were clinically relevant because we're nurses and it's a practice discipline, and we wanted to publish articles that were globally important. So when somebody writes an article and they say in the article, this is what we found in the world, but we don't know about whether this is true in, name a country, Brazil or any country in the world, that's not such a good article for the Journal of Nursing Scholarship because we're read in 103 countries by over 130,000 nurses. So we say clearly in our author guideline that we'd really like you to add to our global knowledge. And so if you're saying this is what we know and we're adding to the global knowledge by this study we did in Brazil, that's great. We're really interested. But if you're saying, well, this is what we know and we're just seeing if it's also true in a particular country, that's not something we're so interested in. So again, one of the things we decided we needed to do while we were setting up these goals, and we also had a goal to make sure that we were publishing in a timely fashion, and we had good stats for our authors so they weren't having to wait an undue amount of time. Along with those goals, we were really also interested in where were we in terms of our impact factor. We wanted to be in the top 10. And I'm very pleased to say that for the past, again, I'd have to go look this up, but at least 5 years, we have been in the top 10. We've been all different numbers. We've been 2, we've been 5, we've been 6. But we have been consistently in the top 10 in nursing journals, both for social science and health science. I think those are the 2 different categories that they have, and or social science and science. I can't tell you exactly what they say, but there are 2 different rankings that nursing gets. And this has been true even though the number of nursing journals that are being reviewed has consistently increased. So with more and more journals that we're competing against, we're still doing very well. And so that was another challenge that we really looked at, and actually having a good impact factor has been one of my very happy achievements. I feel like I should stop right now because the room that I'm in with my dog, and I'm wondering if you're hearing him because he's making a lot of noise. He's going, so if you are, and I know you're nurses, don't worry about whether there's somebody in this room that has some kind of horrible respiratory problem. That is just my fabulous dog that I can't put anywhere else because we have some work being done in the house and he has to stay here with me, so he's not bothering people. So I apologize for that. I'm sorry. But to go back to what we were talking about, and Wobbly, maybe you could be a little quieter. That would be good. When we were looking at the quality of the journal, there were other decisions that had to be made, like how many times a year were we going to publish and how many articles a year were we going to publish. And some of that has to do with your publisher and contracts that you have. And in the beginning, we had a quite strict page limit. This was when we were still actually publishing hard copy. And so I couldn't have more than 118 pages per issue. There was a decision, we used to be 4 issues a year to go to 6 issues a year. And now that we're not physically printing and they're all online, nobody cares about how many pages we have anymore. It's a question of wanting to deliver the same number of pages that we do, so there's some kind of consistency. So I try to stay around that 120 pages. Sometimes I'm a little more if I'm getting a lot of particularly good manuscripts. Sometimes I'm a little less. But I think it's important that we're only publishing really good articles and that we are having some consistency. Going from 4 to 6 times a year that issues were compiled, which increases the number of articles you have, was a little bit of a challenge because the more articles you have means the more articles you need to have cited. And so sometimes that's not really a very good thing for your impact factor. It was something that we really worried about. And we were very relieved to see that even though we increased our number of articles we were publishing a year, we were still able to keep up the number of citations. So that really all goes to quality, the challenge of publishing really quality manuscripts. And that's not so easy because what I think is quality might not be what anybody else thinks is quality. I'm only one person. So in part, having a wonderful editorial board is really helpful for that. And we've asked people that we know are active researchers in different countries if they'd like to be on our editorial board. The obligation for being on the editorial board is that we meet once a quarter by Zoom. And so obviously it's all different times of the day because people are everywhere. And so it might not be the most convenient time, but we try to do that as well as we can and are very thrilled when people, and we have people who are very consistent about meeting so that they can think about in their country, what are people talking about? What's important research? What would they like to see us publish more articles on? Do we have thoughts about special issues? That's why we happen to have 3 going at the same time, because our editorial board had some great ideas and I didn't want to push them back years. They let us know what they're hearing when they go to conferences from people, if we're getting too many articles on one topic or, what the story is. So very important to have that global representation. And I have to say that although we have people on the editorial board from South America, we don't have as many as we like. So if there is anyone among you who's a very active researcher who would be interested in, and who's very published and who would be interested in being on our editorial board, please do send me an email. I'm very easy to find. It's Susan, SUSAN.Gennaro, GENNARO @BC, B as in bonus, and C as in, Carla, .edu. And we'd be happy to hear from you. Likewise, if there's anyone among you who'd be interested in being a manuscript reviewer, we're always looking for more manuscript reviewers. You can also email me, and I'd be very thrilled if you're published to add you to our manuscript reviewer list. You can tell us how many manuscripts a year you're willing to review, areas that you really want to get manuscripts in. You can let us know if there are times that you won't be available. We take all that into very careful consideration. We don't want to overburden anybody. We know what a gift it is to have peer reviewers. So we're always looking for people who can represent the part of the world that they come from. I like to, if I'm having an article that's talking about healthcare or anything really in a particular area of the world, I like to have a reviewer from that area because I can't know whether this is really the way things are done in a particular area. It helps to have some more geographically close review. So again, if you're either interested in being a manuscript reviewer or the editorial board, love to hear from you, and love to hear from you from any questions you might have following this, even though I know we're going to get a chance to talk a little bit. So please do let me know in any way that I can be helpful to you, or you can be helpful to the Journal of Nursing Scholarship. That would be good for both of us. At any rate, going back to challenges, I think the greatest challenge to being an editor is that there's a huge amount of research being done, and we know from lots and lots of studies that the number of studies being done, the number of articles being published are increasing really exponentially. But even though I get a large number of submissions a year, I don't get a large number of submissions of excellent articles. So I can tell you that we just redid our author guidelines, and on the author guidelines, we're really trying to say to people, we really care about the global knowledge. Please only send us your manuscript if it adds to our global knowledge. We're not interested in publishing articles on research that were done on nursing students. We're really interested, our mission as a journal is to improve the health of the world's people. So we're very interested in clinically relevant articles, not research on nursing education or in which students, not people with a health condition, are the ones being studied. So, and I know when I say health condition that we do care about health promotion, and you could make a great case for students are great for that. But students are only one age generally, and an easy subject group, and generally the articles that we get that were done on, manuscripts we get that were done on students aren't really the ones we're most interested in. So we clearly tell people that we publish very few concept analysis papers. Every doctoral program makes students do, in the United States at least, makes students do a concept analysis. So we get a lot of papers that aren't appropriate. And we publish very few psychometric studies. There are journals that just look at whether a new tool is a good tool or not. Unless it's really some earth-shaking kind of tool, don't publish those. So always important for people to look at the author guidelines. We've had to make some decisions about what articles we think are going to be the most interesting to our readers. In order to do that, we look at, and our publisher gives us this information, the number of the most downloaded articles, what has been most downloaded. We look at what's been most cited and most downloaded. And we look at articles that have never been cited or not been downloaded. And so that gives you some kinds of ideas. Over time, I've come to realize that people show less interest, if you count downloading and citing, in very specific, here's a very specific health condition, esophageal whatever, and a very specific way you might manage some part of esophageal whatever. A lot of people that read our journal are not interested in very, very specific, because those 130,000 nurses, not that many of them are looking at a very, very specific. So we're more interested in things that have wider scope, like if you're doing an article about pain or mobility or things that are true for lots of people, although we do publish articles that are just about children or just about childbirth or those kinds of things. But, so it depends on really how specific a thing is or not for our interest. That's also why we are publishing less concept analysis and psychometric articles, because those were ones that people didn't seem to show an interest in. And we go over that with the editorial board so they can put their thoughts in as to what's really important. As an example of this, one of the early special collections we did, special issues, was on fundamental nursing care. What science is behind fundamental nursing care? And I thought, never in a million years would I have decided that was a good topic, but the editorial board was really enthusiastic. And in fact, a lot of the articles in that special issue were very, very downloaded and very, very cited. So that really taught me something, which was a great thing. Some of the things that have been most downloaded and most cited for us are things like there was an article on hand hygiene that the reviewer said there's really not so much new in here. I don't know if you really want to publish this, but I thought there was enough new, and obviously so do our readers. Lots of articles on advanced practice nursing in different countries have done very well. Some articles that are more theoretical, why do you want to use models in nursing, have done very well, or things about how to do better qualitative research, because we are, after all, a nursing research, the Journal of Nursing Scholarship, we're about scholarship. But we do try to be clinically relevant and keep an eye on what it seems that people really care about and what are breaking issues. So, we've done one on climate change and the effects of that on people. We've had a lot of articles lately on the social determinants of health, although we didn't say that was a special issue. So, the challenge is getting great articles that you can publish, that you're excited about, and not the 100th article on quality of life of some small segment of the population that really you don't think is going to make a difference to nursing care. My test is always, as a practicing nurse, is this something that would be useful and exciting to me? So, my inexperience was part of my problem in the beginning, figuring out timing and how to use systems and how to work with publishers and what people really wanted from me. Some of my challenges really have had to do with how do you ensure quality, how do you try to have a good impact factor, what kind of goals do you set for yourself, how do you let people know what's important, what kinds of articles you really want to receive. How do you have enough good, solid articles? And now we're only accepting about between 15 and 18% of the articles we get. So we get way many more manuscripts than we need, especially during the worst parts of COVID. I think people were just staying home and writing. So we were really swamped, and that made it very hard to stay up to date. But things have settled down a little bit, but we're still only accepting about 15% of what it is we receive. So lots of submissions, not always great. Trying very hard to make sure that we're publishing from around the world. So we care about where people are submitting from geographically, and are glad that it's easy to submit from wherever you are. English is sometimes a little bit of a problem. I know how hard it is to be writing in a different language. And it really does help if people have gotten some help in getting the very best English. It upsets reviewers, so it's helpful for the author's point of view to have things as well written and as clear as possible. I'd like to end by talking about what I think of as the journal's achievements. So I think that the fact that we've been able to maintain impact factor in the top 10 is a great achievement. I think the fact that our downloads have consistently increased and increased dramatically is a wonderful achievement, because it says to me, people care enough about what we're publishing that they want to keep the article, that they want to download it and have it. I think the number of submissions being so high is another sign that people really care about the journal and would like to be published there. So it feels like we're doing a quality job. Of course, that is something that always worries me, and I'm always concerned about, are we staying at the top of our game, because I don't want to have a less quality job. And so we're also always looking at, do we need to refresh the fonts that we're publishing in? Are we having really good turnaround times? Are we being responsive to the people who are emailing us? All the kinds of things that make people feel good when they think about the Journal of Nursing Scholarship. So right now, I'm feeling like it's a better journal than it was, and that's a good thing. And I continue to amaze myself that we continue to think of new ways to make it even better. But maybe this is a good place for me to stop, having discussed some of my experiences, challenges, and achievements, so that we can talk with each other. So I really look forward to your questions, and thank you for being with us here today and taking this time to listen to me. I hope I wasn't too boring.